everyone, I'm Ava, and today I want to talk to you about 5 things that people really want to know about the Dutch and Netherlands. I've had my own set of questions in getting to know and love this wonderful tiny country, but apparently there are people who have some very specific questions about the Dutch. And today I thought I would open up a conversation with you about these things that people want to know. I'm going to try and answer these questions based on my experience, based on what Dutch people around me have told me, and sometimes I looked it up to try and see what the internet is saying. And of course, viewers, please, this time I really want to know what you have to say, because most of you are Dutch, some of you are maybe getting to know the Netherlands, and maybe some of you just have thoughts on this. So please let me know in the comments because, well, some of these questions are just, you'll see. So moving right along to number 1, why are the Dutch tall? Now that is absolutely true. The Dutch are tall, first of all. If you didn't know, the Dutch are the tallest in the world. Dutch men average about 185 centimeters in height, and Dutch women are about 169 centimeters tall. So on average, they are the tallest in the world. I have to say that I feel quite lucky that I am not the average height for an American woman. I am slightly taller. An average American woman is about 5'4", whereas I'm about 5'7.5". I know it's really specific, but that half an inch, I really like to keep it there. So to translate that, I'm about 175 centimeters, and I cannot imagine that if I were shorter, what my life would be like here, because everything in this country is built for taller people. And I find it quite nice that my kitchen counter, for instance, is higher than what I was used to back in the US. So that is quite nice because now I don't need to hunch over on my counter to, chop some vegetables, do some cooking, whatever. So I feel quite happy that I'm of a height where living in the Netherlands has not been a problem for me in terms of buying clothes or things like that. Although, of course, you can find things in many different sizes. And it's also nice that I no longer have to be the tallest friend. I mean, I'm not even that tall, but in the US, I definitely was often one of the taller people. Not the case in the Netherlands. Here in the Netherlands, I am very much average height. Okay, so the Dutch are tall, but why? Now, when I ask this question to Dutch people, the answer that I get really often, especially from Dutch people who are maybe slightly older than me, is how much dairy Dutch people consume in their diet. Basically, cheese. Now, I'm not trying to be an expert on this. I do not know the answers, which is why it would be interesting to hear what you think. I like to know what the public think about these kinds of things and what answers they would have to these questions. So one of the answers that I got pretty often was dairy and cheese, that it helps Dutch people grow tall and strong. And the other thing that might go well in combination with a lot of cheese could be natural selection. Maybe it just so happened that the tall genes in the Dutch over time won and the Dutch are now tall. So that is another reason for why people think that the Dutch people are so tall. Because they didn't used to always be tall. It's pretty recently that they've claimed the title of the tallest in the world. Moving right along to the second question that people absolutely want to know the answer to about the Dutch is, why are the Dutch so good at English? This is a question that I've asked myself very many times. I've asked Dutch people this. How is it that many people that I've encountered in the Netherlands speak English so well? It's not even that there are very many Dutch people who speak English, which is true, but it's that for me, the part that's surprising is that the Dutch people who do speak English speak it really well. They speak it so well that I often forget that English is not their native language. Of course, I hear an accent, but it's really surprising how good the grammar is. It's really surprising how many words people seem to know in English. And maybe if you're Dutch and watching this, you're thinking, well, of course. But to other people, this is quite surprising. And even by European standards, Dutch people speak really good English. I remember when I made my first trip to the Netherlands. This was in Amsterdam, and I would first ask people when I would go to the stores or when I would go to a cafe, before I started speaking, I would ask them if they spoke English. I would say, excuse me, do you speak English? And then I would continue, because up to that point, I of course thought that it was super rude to just start speaking in English. They didn't speak English. Maybe then I would try and, learn some Dutch if I found that that was necessary. Turns out that was absolutely not necessary. Day 3, I had stopped asking people if they spoke English because when I would ask people, do you speak English? They would look at me a little bit confused, like almost shocked, like, of course they speak English. What do you expect? This is the Netherlands. Everybody speaks English. That's not true. They are, of course, people who live in areas where they don't need to speak English as much, especially outside of cities. But generally speaking, within the cities, especially in Amsterdam, I've just been surprised by how easy it is to just assume that people speak English. If you are on my channel for the first time, I do speak Dutch and I do love learning the local language. But it is nice to know that people speak English. And when I first visited as a tourist, I was definitely pleasantly surprised. Okay, so why is it the case that Dutch people speak such good English? So I asked my partner when she started learning English, and she started learning English when she was 12. Now, we met in the US where she was enrolled at an American university and her English was flawless. Her English is flawless. I don't understand how from the age of 12 until now she could have learned English to the point where her English is amazing. Because generally for learning another language, 12 years old is pretty late. So unless you had lots of exposure to the language, you're probably not going to learn it as good as the Dutch people seem to have learned it. So there are a couple of things that people have proposed to me as answers to this question. So one of them has been that Dutch education system for learning languages is pretty good, so people actually learn a lot in their classes and are able to come out speaking pretty good English. The second thing that people often tell me is that Dutch people are surrounded by English. Like they watch a lot of English TV. They listen to a lot of English songs. And dubbing is not common in the Netherlands. So they often cite this as one of the reasons why they have been exposed to English to a great degree. And I've often heard people compare this to Germany or Italy where the movies are dubbed or the TV shows are dubbed into the local language. So they say that this has helped them learn English by just hearing it through osmosis. So I definitely find this pretty interesting. And I don't know if this is why Dutch people speak such good English. It seems pretty likely, but all I can say is the outcome is there. The English is fantastic. And just as a side note, I do know that now the country has started teaching English at a younger age. So it's not the case that everyone's now learning it when they're 12 years old. So I think now maybe they're learning it slightly younger, like 8 or 10. But that is not the case for people who are in their 20s or 30s, so who are around my age. And they speak perfect English. Just needed to get it out there one more time. Dutch people speak really good English. Question number 3. Why are Dutch DJs so good? You guys, I had no idea how many amazing Dutch DJs they are until I was researching for this video. Because let me tell you, I did know a couple of Dutch DJs who were really famous, but I had no idea, like for instance, Afrojack was Dutch. Someone whose name is Armin van Buuren, you can kind of figure out that they are Dutch. But for a long time, I didn't know Tiesto was Dutch. Not long ago, 7 out of the 10 top DJs in the world were Dutch. So of course, people want to know, why is this the case? This is obviously a very important question. A FAQ, if you will. So this is one of the questions that I actually had to look up the answer to because I didn't know. And people have definitely asked this question in the US. People are curious about how Dutch DJs are awesome. And people who are really into EDM music definitely know that many of these DJs are Dutch. So there have been 2 answers that I came across. One of them is that apparently the Netherlands takes EDM very seriously. So if you want to pursue this as a career, there is more of a chance that you might succeed because the Netherlands will take it seriously and you might be able to hone your craft. That seems pretty good. And the other reason is the number of music festivals in the country. I found out a couple of years ago that the Netherlands actually has a number of music festivals each year. In fact, currently the number is over 1,000 music festivals each year in this country of 17 million people. That is a lot of music festivals, and how amazing is that? So this may be one of the reasons why Dutch DJs are so good. This is part of the culture, another reason for why they might have been able to hone their craft. Or I don't know, maybe it's all the cheese they eat. Just kidding. Correlation is not causation. Question number 4 that people have about the Dutch is, why are the Dutch so happy? This is obviously another VIQ, a very important question. Year after year, the Netherlands has been ranked as one of the happiest countries in the world. And I noticed, even when I was in the US, it's one of the reasons I moved here last year. But can you really quantify happiness? And why would this be the case? Well, I don't know about quantifying this, but what I can definitely say is when I arrive at Schiphol Airport, I am just overwhelmed by how many people seem so happy to return to their tiny country. In New York, for instance, when people land at JFK, they are miserable. They are very upset that they are no longer on holiday, that they need to come back to New York City and deal with everybody else. That is not the case in the Netherlands. Everyone's like, oh, I'm home. And there's so many people who are there to greet them at the airport with balloons. And if this doesn't indicate how happy the Dutch are, I don't know what does. The cheese. Probably the cheese, which may be one of the reasons the Dutch are so happy. Besides cheese, which, I mean, of course, is a very important factor, I have a feeling that work-life balance may have something to do with it. And this is coming from my experience and from what I have noticed when talking to Dutch people. Dutch people are really fond of work-life balance. They have plenty of vacation days, many people work part-time, and they find it really important to balance their personal life with their work life. And I do think that this might contribute to the Dutch happiness. The final thing I want to say on this subject is I think the Dutch are very gezellig, and maybe gezelligheid contributes to happiness. After all, wouldn't you be happy if you're always having a nice time, or rather a gezellig time? Number 5, the final question on this list, one of the questions that people really want to know about the Dutch is, why don't the Dutch have curtains? Now, if you're not Dutch or don't live in the Netherlands, you may not know, but the Dutch don't seem to be very fond of curtains. If you ever visit the Netherlands and you walk around in the cities, you will see that people's windows are just, well, open for you to take a look into. Apparently it's very rude, so don't do that. While I may be a little creepy and I walk on the street, peer into people's windows to see and catch a glimpse of what they're doing in their daily lives, apparently don't do that. That's a faux pas. Pro tip, when you visit the Netherlands, even though people don't have curtains, don't look into them. Good luck with that. I found it to be really difficult. For Dutch people watching, I'm kidding. I was kidding there. I was half kidding there. So why is it the case that Dutch people don't seem to be so fond of curtains? Is it that they don't enjoy privacy? I have a feeling that's not it, but maybe it is. From my research and talking to other Dutch people, one reason for this could stem from the Protestant religion tradition. Well, if you have nothing to hide, your windows would just be open for the world to see. That makes sense, and maybe it just carried on into present times. But when I was visiting Den Haag a couple of weeks ago, I did a free walking tour. Those are great, by the way. I did a free walking tour, and the tour guide had a different story. According to the tour guide, the Dutch like to do normaal, which is just don't do anything flashy or outlandish. Behave normally, blend in, all good stuff. So, the Dutch like to do normaal, and that was reflected in the architecture, where nothing could be grand or too decorative. It was all very sober, but yet aesthetically pleasing for me, at least now. But yes, everything was very sober, no bright colors, nothing like that. However, if people had money, one way in which they could show it was by making their interior really fancy. So they would not have curtains so that people could look in and see how much wealth they had. And their living rooms would be arranged precisely for that purpose. I think I like this story better. It's a little juicier. What do you guys think? Which one is more convincing to you? Anyway, so those were 5 questions that people really wanted to know the answer to about the Dutch and the Netherlands. I'll admit, making this video really made me more conscious about the things I did know about the Netherlands already, and I learned a lot. And I'm hoping to learn even more from your comments as usual.